Hello and welcome to another special WWDC 24 episode of AppStories. I'm Federico, and I am joined today by another special guest following last night's keynote special. I'm joined by Myke Hurley. Hey, Myke.
Hello, Federico.
Hey, thank you for joining me. And of course, I should thank our sponsor for this special WWDC 24 week on MacStories, which is Collide. So thank you, Collide, for sponsoring MacStories and AppStories this week. Myke, I just wanted to jump right in with you. So last night we shared some keynote impressions, and I just wanted to quickly get a vibe check from you.
Oh God, the worst question? All right, so look, I have yet to, as we're talking right now, I haven't recorded with Jason, which will be the first thing that I've done. So I don't actually think at this point I've even been able to speak aloud, and really think aloud my feelings. My biggest takeaway is everything would be so different if they didn't give me the ability to make images.
I feel the same way. I think I feel the same way.
Everything would be different if the image generation just did not exist in Apple Intelligence.
Yeah.
That is, from my perspective, honestly, in the time that I have followed them, one of the biggest whiffs I've ever seen them take. You know when you're watching something on television with a family member or whatever, and you it's like, oh, I really wanted you to watch this show. Yeah. And but then something stupid happens in the show and you get secondhand embarrassment.
Oh, you mean you recommending Fallout the Grey?
Yeah, but I think it's worse when you're watching something together, right?
I'm kidding.
You can feel that she's not enjoying it, but you recommended it and you start to get embarrassed. That was happening to me while I was watching WWDC. I felt embarrassed for them. And I'm sorry if you worked on this, but you just made a bad version of Midjourney. I don't understand it, and I feel like there's no real benefit to it. And I think it's overshadowing everything else. Absolutely everything else is overshadowed by the weird supermom, creepy looking emoji that they made, right?
With the bag under the eyes, yeah.
Yeah, all of it is just it doesn't even really look like something made by Apple. And it was similar, the Genmoji that they made, right?
Yes.
The dinosaur one is what is that? But then the one with the bagel and the smiley things, yes, that looks like Apple emoji. But there's this other weird thing that just looks like it was made by 123 ABC generator, right?
Yeah.
It just doesn't. Yeah. So my vibe check is where I am right now is I'm too hung up on this, on this image thing. This will subside, and then I will be able to be more excited, I think, about a lot of the other stuff that's in Apple Intelligence. But right now, I'm really, really focused on that.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this since last night because I literally have the same feelings. Everything else looked pretty good, and then you just had to show off image generation. And I just feel like you and I and John and Steven, I think there's going to be this chasm for creative people to the point where I think I will never like these features. As a creative person, I think I will always find them gross to an extent. I don't know. So thank you for the vibe check, Myke. I also feel the same way. I wanted to briefly talk to you about something that we didn't mention last night because I did not have the beta installed. visionOS 2. You before me, and then I also installed it. We have visionOS 2 on our Vision Pros. And I think you've played around with it for slightly longer than I have. I played around for What do you think about it? How is it?
It is a really great visionOS 1.5. And I'm not trying to be disparaging.
You're bringing the takes today. I love it.
I'm not trying to be mean, though, because I actually think this is a really great step forward for visionOS. But I don't think they needed to call it 2, really. And I also don't think they needed to call it 2 because technically, on how you look at it, it's only been 6 to 9 months since this thing, not even that 6 months since it actually came out, right?
Yeah.
Since really visionOS 1 shipped. That was when it shipped. And this is a really great 6 months later release. They have addressed a bunch of small things. They've added in some bigger things, but they haven't they haven't really taken any meaningful steps, and also, unfortunately, a lot of the bigger features of iOS and iPadOS and macOS, they're not in here.
Yeah, there's not going to be any Apple Intelligence at launch, it seems, on visionOS. visionOS.
There's no like theming of the icons.
No
right?
theming.
Like none of that's there.
At least the icons can be rearranged now, and you can.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like icons rearranging, new gestures for going home, the spatial photo stuff, the keyboard detection. All of that's fantastic. And when the Mac display is not until later on in the year, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't even know if that's going to be in this beta cycle, to be honest. But like, you know, the like the ultra wide, like all of this stuff, these are like really good steps forward for visionOS. And I'm happy that it got things. I was worried. Initially, we always were like, oh, you know, WWDC is going to be all about visionOS. And then AI started creeping up, and it was like, are they even going to touch it? Like, it got more attention for its own specific features than iPadOS got.
Yes.
But it didn't benefit from all of the system-wide features that all the other platforms got.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much clear at this point that there are really two sort of main tracks going on at Apple right now, which is iOS and AI, and all the other operating systems sort of just waiting in the backseat for now. And that includes visionOS, iPadOS, I mean, watchOS 11, also a pretty minor update. tvOS, I think it also has just a handful of new features. But yeah, at the very least, visionOS 2.0 got more stuff than iPadOS.
Yeah.
I was counting the iPadOS specific features, and I think it's literally two things that are specific to iPadOS, which is the top bars and Apple Pencil features, like Smart Script, for example. And that's it, like just two features on iPadOS. So at the very least, visionOS got some stuff. The new gestures are interesting. So you hold out your palm and you look at it, and a dot appears. And then when you click with your hands, like when you pinch your fingers on this dot, the home screen appears. Then if you flip your hand over, you can show like a miniaturized version of Control Center of sorts. Like it shows you the battery and the time. And then if you click that, it actually opens the full Control Center.
And if you press and hold,
there's a
you
volume.
can like change the volume. Like these are, I mean, I'll say it takes a little bit to get used to it. I actually think more than any other gesture in visionOS, like, because it's kind of weird where like you got to look and then the button and then you tap. Like I was tapping before the button would appear, but once you get used to it, it's way nicer than reaching up and hitting the buttons on top of the headset itself.
Yeah,
which has always felt like quite awkward, really. That you're
looking up.
No, but the looking up, but also the physical, like going up and pressing the button every time I want to go home. You know, that has not been a great experience. But look, as a big fan, I think of everyone that I know, the biggest fan of visionOS and like use it the most. These are all excellent features. Like they added some stuff like I use Safari profiles. They have not been in visionOS until now, and I'm really happy that they're there because it actually means I can use Safari properly. So I think this is a very good step forward. It is not a significant one, and I'm a little concerned about some of the features that it is not getting with no timeline on when it will see any of it.
Yeah, because I mean, there's very likely a scenario in which if we are going to get any new multitasking features, those are going to be WWDC 2025. Like,
there'll be nothing like that. I'm just talking about Apple Intelligence. Like, you've seen all the system stuff you're going to get for a year, but like, you know, over the course of the next year, visionOS is going to start to fall behind. And like, you know, even look, I'm really excited about iPhone mirroring on the Mac.
Yes.
Do you know where I'd prefer to do that? Is in visionOS. And like, technically, you can AirPlay mirror to the Vision Pro now, so it's like halfway.
Yeah, which is nice. The Vision Pro now acts as an AirPlay receiver. That's also like a very nice feature.
But you can't control the iPhone with the Vision Pro.
No. So you can just stream Delta, for example, or something. Like you can stream it to the Vision Pro. Yeah, I agree with you. It's I think when you first said it, like it's a really nice 1.5. I thought it was like a funny hot take, but the more we talk about it, the more I think I agree with you.
No, and look, I think honestly, I think that they know this, and I mean, how could you not? This is a good step forward, but it is not what you would think of as a full revolution of the operating system, considering how young it is.
Yeah.
But I'm happy about the things that they've added, and I just hope that if we just over the next 3 to 4 years get this amount of focus on it each year, I would be very happy about that. And the reason I say that is because I look at what happens to iPadOS, right, where you have to wait 5 years to get a jump. And I want them to be iterating on this operating system every year and moving it forward while it is still quite nascent. But I am a little bit here's the thing I don't know, Federico, and I'm concerned about this. The issue we may have here is that the hardware, this $3,500 hardware, is actually not powerful enough to run Apple Intelligence. And if that's the case, it shows, clearly how this last year has gone for them in a way that they weren't expecting.
Yeah.
Because it has the M chip, but the word on the street is that it's RAM. RAM is the important part. And that's why you've got that cutoff. And so, how much RAM's in the Vision Pro? I don't know. I'm going to see if I can try and find the answer to that. But I'm worried that if that's the case, then I don't know what's going to happen here.
Yeah.
This episode of AppStories is brought to you by 1Password. In a perfect world, end users would only work on managed devices with IT-approved apps. But every day, employees use personal devices and unapproved apps that aren't protected by MDM, IAM, or any other security tool. There's a giant gap between the security tools we have and the way we actually work. 1Password calls it the Access Trust Gap, and they've also created the first ever solution to fill it. 1Password Extended Access Management secures every sign-in for every app on every device. It includes the password manager you know and love and the device trust solution you've probably heard of on this podcast back when it was called Collide. 1Password Extended Access Management cares about user experience and privacy, which means it can go places other tools can't, like personal and contractor devices. It ensures that every device is known and healthy and every login is protected. So stop trying to ban BYOD or shadow IT and start protecting them with 1Password Extended Access Management. Check it out today at onepassword.com/MacStoriesUnwind. That's onepassword.com/MacStoriesUnwind. Our thanks to 1Password for their support of the show.
All right, and we're now joined by our man on the ground in Cupertino at Apple Park, John Voorhees. Hello, John.
Hello, everybody. How you doing today?
Hi, John.
Hello.
Hey, Myke.
Hi. We're doing great.
I just did a quick Google for some real-time follow-up that the Vision Pro has 16 gigabytes of RAM. So
okay.
I think it is just they did not get it ready in time rather than you can't do it, which is good. That makes me feel better.
Yeah, I have some info on that.
Okay.
Oh, here we go.
Okay.
I just got back from an Apple Intelligence briefing with Zach Hall. It was just the two of us getting a 2-on-2 demonstration of everything. And I asked about the Vision Pro because I said, it's got an M2 in it, and you would think that it could do some of this stuff. And it was in a very PR way, it was implied to me that yes, it can do it and it will do it. It's just not ready yet. There are, quote, other considerations that have to be accounted for, which I took to mean more of an interaction model and design.
I'll take that.
Type of issue. And what, this all came up in the context of a timeline about what's coming out when. And obviously nothing's in the betas right now. Later this summer, you'll start seeing some of the Apple Intelligence stuff in the developer betas. In the fall, when the OSs are released, it'll be part of a beta. There will be a beta. These features will be considered beta, and they will not necessarily all be available day one, but will be rolling out over time as we move forward. And it was pretty clear that that's not just features over time, but it's also devices. So I don't think we're going to wait until 2025 to see Vision Pro get Apple Intelligence.
Oh, that's great.
Interesting.
I'm very happy to hear that, actually, John. That's really good. I mean, it is weird to me, though, like they didn't even give a hint to it, but I understand the idea of like, oh, we just haven't built the UI. It's like, you know what, that's perfectly fine. Like, I get it. So that's that. You know what I'll say, though? It's very positive that they're giving these statements. Right.
Oh, it is. I mean, I actually didn't expect them to answer that even as directly as they did. I mean, there were no promises, but of course it's, I mean, a couple other tidbits from this that are interesting is that it's US English at first only, but that just means you have to have your device set to US English and Siri set to US English. It's not a region thing. So if you're in Europe, you can use this, or, anywhere else in the world, you'll be able to use it as long as you set everything to US English.
Can I just say, when you came in and said, like, an Apple intelligence briefing makes you sound like the president?
I know.
I've just had my intelligence briefing. I'm ready to go. Something's kicking off over here.
They literally took me to a far corner of Apple Park, and I asked very nicely afterwards, could you let me out of at this entrance? It's literally across from my hotel. And they said, no, we're taking you to the opposite end of Apple Park, so you have to drive all the way around Apple Park again to get to your hotel to be back for this. Oh, it's just awful. I'm being very carefully watched while I'm there. The demo was fantastic. It was really neat. One of the things that I noticed in the demo is that when you're using Type to Siri, there's a Siri button just under the keyboard that you can tap at any time to kind of go back into the voice mode if you want, which is just a nice way to kind of toggle between the two ways of doing things. I don't think was really mentioned in the keynote either.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I think the typing to Siri is the interaction I'm looking forward the most. Type to Siri, actually, and this is where I put on my iOS historian hat. Type to Siri isn't technically a new feature or a new term. Mm-hmm. It's been in accessibility forever. I think it was iOS 10 or something. But obviously, this is different, right? This is not an accessibility mode. This is a brand new interaction, and it's using the new conversational capabilities of Siri. So if my understanding is correct, John, we will be getting at some point this summer that version of Siri, which is shipping this year. We will be getting the writing tools also this year. Yep. But stuff like, for example, Siri performing actions inside of apps, that's going to be 2025. That's going to be next year, right?
Yeah, that's a little further out, I think. Yeah, it was one of the interesting things about talking to them about this too is that Zach and I were asking questions about how are you going to avoid hallucinations? What's going on there? There will be a feedback mechanism for users to be able to report things that are unexpected. But part of the way this is designed, it's designed to kind of minimize those risks. They're still there, and nobody was willing to say bad things won't happen or unexpected things won't happen. But for instance, if you are using this image generation tool that they've got, you're being given 3 styles, a selection of people who are already in your photos, and various other accessories and places and events and things that you can combine to make the images. There's heavy duty guardrails around what you can even ask it to do. And while it could still hallucinate and create something that's unexpected, I think that the design itself of the tools that they've got is made that way in part, at least, to minimize that sort of thing.
So you kind of constricted from so say I want to make an image of you, right? Am I kind of just in the user interface constricted about how I can make that look?
Yes, you can do it as kind of the cartoony version, which we saw a lot of during the keynote, a sketch style or an illustration style. And then you could then it'll generate a picture of me. Then you could type in, put John in front of the Golden Gate Bridge, and it would do that.
But I mean, let's face it. I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. I could also type, make it look like John is naked, right? I could do that, right? And the people are gonna do it. People are gonna do it.
Sure, they will. But I got to imagine that there's certain things like that are going to be anticipated and not possible. But yeah, you can try it. You can say, make John a Nazi and see what happens.
Yeah, or just for me, it's like make John a super villain, right? Like, I was thinking about the superhero. That's great. But what about the supervillain?
Right.
I just can't get my head around this. Like, I can't reconcile it yet. Like, I'm struggling. I'm struggling with it.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the image stuff at all, but
we were saying before you joined, John, that Myke and I were struggling to reconcile everything that was announced yesterday up until the point where they showed off image generation, because it does look like an Apple knockoff of Midjourney or something like that. And there's a part of me personally, I feel like as a creative person, I really struggle to accept these tools and the idea that, I'm gonna give you a very practical example. 2 weeks ago, when we launched the Comfort Zone podcast, we wanted to have illustrated versions for the podcast artwork of Nilean, Chris, and Matt, and we reached out to a professional artist who created the illustration for us. An artist that obviously was compensated for their work, and an actual person that, there was feedback back and forth, working with a professional.
Right.
Now, who's going to stop, somebody else, well, not me, but somebody else from saying, well, why should I go to an artist where I can just, type in a little prompt in the Messages app for a contact and say, hey, make an illustrated version of Nilean and, copy and paste. Here we go. I have an illustration. And I didn't have to pay anybody, because the large language model, based on some authorized data sets that Apple thinks are good to use, well, now I'm creating quote unquote art on my phone with prompts, and I didn't have to reach out to an artist. That, to me, like, as a creative person who works with other creative people, it just kind of feels a little gross.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you, Federico. And it's, to me, some of these features, especially that, and also the ChatGPT stuff, feels very tacked on and very reactionary to the marketplace, more than it does like some of the other things like the writing tools and the Siri. All of that, I think, fits well with the devices and kind of using your apps and your information to do this stuff. We got some really interesting demos where we're seeing the models working both on device and in the cloud, and how it decides to do that, one versus the other. And it can be it's actually very, very fast. Now, I'm sure they had an amazing internet connection there in that briefing room, but you couldn't really tell a difference. It wasn't really noticeable when it was going to the cloud versus when it was going onto the device. And it may not always make the same choice twice, depending on where it decides the best information is for deciding that kind of stuff. So that was kind of interesting to see as well. So
yeah, well, we'll see. Obviously, we don't have any of these features yet. John, let me ask you, do you have any betas installed on your devices yet?
I do not, mainly because I just don't have enough devices here to have a plan B. If something breaks on me, I'm kind of in trouble. So I would really like to put it on my phone and on my iPad and on my Mac, but I'm not doing that until I'm home probably, or at least later in the week when most of my work is done. I may do my phone first. I may do that even today, but I can't really afford to have the iPad or the Mac unavailable while I'm here in California.
Okay, so I asked this question to Myke at the beginning of the show, and I'm going to ask the same question to you, John, because we haven't spoken since yesterday. You were at the event and everything. Quick vibe check from you. Like, how was the event compared to last year? What's the vibe? What are people saying there? Because obviously, as we know, it's a very different thing to be at the event and to follow the event from home.
Yeah, I would say that the community aspect of it is back in a much bigger way than it was the last 2 years. There are a lot of developers here who don't have tickets and are attending things like there's Core Coffee, which is a thing that Malin and Kai put on. They're the developers of Mercury Weather. That's every single day while we're here. There was a thing that Revenue Cat did downtown San Jose yesterday that I went to with Steven. Just a bunch of different events happening in and around San Jose and Cupertino, and really well attended, like lots more people than I saw the last 2 years. But by the same token, when I was actually at the keynote, there were a lot of empty seats. And someone told me in part that was because for whatever reason, they decided to separate the US media from the rest of the world's media, and that everybody from the rest of the world was sitting in a different section. But I'm not sure that necessarily explains why there were blocks of empty seats. It wasn't like a ton of empty seats, but I could definitely see places where you could fit, another 50, 60, 70 people into the area just kind of in and around where I was sitting with people. So it's, yeah, it is a little weird. People seem to, developers seem to be excited. I mean, I think that there's a lot of the same concerns and questions surrounding a lot of this that you guys have raised both yesterday on AppStories and with Myke today, that it's the same kind of vibe with the developers and with the other press people that I'm talking to here. But yeah, it's I think the most striking thing really is that there's more of a community aspect of this in a way that I wasn't anticipating, because if I hadn't been invited as press, I was considering staying home. And even if I didn't have the press pass this year, I would have been glad to have come, because I've been able to talk to a lot of the developers we write about all year long in a way that wasn't really possible last year or the year before.
Well, that's interesting. I was not expecting a stronger presence from developers without a ticket. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay. So we did a keynote recap yesterday. Obviously, John is busy going to briefings and learning from Apple PR, the latest on Apple Intelligence, iOS, macOS. Have you heard anything about iPadOS? John?
Well, not yet. Later this afternoon, I have a briefing on both iOS and iPadOS together.
Cool. Yeah, the iPadOS segment will probably be 2 minutes.
Yeah, there's a reason why they're combined.
No, let's be real. It's going to be 2 minutes of features and 20 minutes of being upset. Like, come on, let's be honest about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, okay, so that we are right on time for our 30-minute daily episodes of AppStories.
Yes.
We are going to continue wrapping up and sort of covering the event on the site. I believe we just have one OS overview left to publish. I stayed up until 4 a.m. last night trying to finish everything. It's the best time of the year, though, and we'll continue talking about our beta impressions and thoughts and sort of big picture ideas later in the week. I want to thank Myke for joining us today. I am looking forward, Myke, to the episode of Upgrade with the draft results with you and Jason.
Oh, thank you.
I was not keeping score, so I have no idea who won. So stay tuned for that episode of Upgrade coming out shortly, I believe, right? It's coming out when? Today? Tomorrow? When can people...
We're recording it later today, it will be out, I mean, depending on where you are, either late tonight or tomorrow.
Awesome. Okay. And obviously, we are scoring the Ricky's Unconnected later this week. So that's also going to be on Friday. So it's going to be interesting. And John, thank you for finding the time to come back to the hotel and join us. I know that you're very busy. You were extremely busy yesterday. You're very busy today and tomorrow. So thank you for finding the time.
Well, thanks for having me back on my own show, Federico. I appreciate it.
Yes. You're welcome.
It's my show now.
You're welcome anytime. Yeah.
This is what we call a reverse Triple J.
Yes, this is the Europeans taking over on AppStories this week. It is what it is. Thank you, Discord, of course, for listening live, and we will be back tomorrow. Say goodbye, Myke and John.
Goodbye, Myke and John.
Goodbye, Federico.